Good afternoon. I appreciate everyone joining us. I want to start by sharing the fact that this is an evolving review for us. We've only been aware of the incident for less than 24 hours now. So today is an effort to get as much information out as quickly as we can to members of the community who may have expressed concern on what was reported. I'm going to start with the 911 call. I think it's important to note that we've modified the voice in an effort to conceal the identity of the complainant, but I think you'll be able to tell from the content of what is said just exactly what it is that officers were responding to. So we're going to queue up the 911 call.
Somebody shot one of our neighbors. She saw it from a window. She saw it from her window.
911 emergency.
Somebody shot one of my neighbors.
Wait, at what address? Do you know the address? Okay, towards or away?
In the bedroom. Come on, Cindy, in the bedroom. Away from the window. Come on, away from the window. Cindy, go.
Is he at your house?
No, they're not at my house.
Okay, how do you know he was actually shot? Oh, he's outside?
There was a lady, she came out to her house, she said, no, don't do it, don't shoot me, and then shot right now. She came out her front door and somebody shot her.
Is she still outside, do you know?
I don't know, we saw her from the second floor window.
Okay, did you see the person she was talking to?
No, it was a man coming out of the house, we heard.
Okay, so you think she was talking to someone, maybe arguing with someone in the house?
Yeah. Okay, so when you came down Batavia, on the left-hand side, there are two houses. First, there's a dentist office, then there's a house, and then the second house is the one that it's a shorter house. There's a chair on the front porch and a broom. It's the second house on the left when you come off a pole.
Okay. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And everyone in your house is okay?
Well, my teenager saw it from her room upstairs, so I'm going to have to talk to her, but yes, everybody's physically fine.
Okay, so I think you can tell from the content of the audio, barring the fact that the voice has been modulated, just how concerned the neighbor was. The fact that the neighbor lives within a stone's throw from the residents we responded to, the fact that the residents we responded to was described to us to a T, right down to what was on the porch. So officers were responding to a call where the individual who was the 911 caller said that her daughter, who is an adult, saw someone shot in front of that house, with the exchange being no, don't, and then shots ringing out. So that's what officers knew when they responded. And this is what you'll see in the body-worn camera footage we're about to share, is their response to a very dynamic situation in which the information they had was very preliminary and was being relayed to them by dispatch. So we're going to dim the lights for the benefit of the camera.
Stop there. All right, go down to your knees. I got it. Take your rose. Just put your hands behind your back with your palms up, okay? You're okay. Can you separate your arms for me? Yep. Great, thank you. All right, I'm gonna help you stand up, okay? You're all right. You got no weapons on you or anything like that? What's your name?
Sharpie.
Okay, good. Go right back here. Is this your mother, Rick? Okay, I'm gonna just quick check you for weapons, okay?
Okay, I'm 12. I'll be 13 in April.
Okay. Yep. 1 second. Come on the side of the van. You have no weapons, right? quick check you. Is that okay?
You got school uniform
Yep.
on, that's
We'll
it.
switch. Yeah, you're okay. We're gonna quick check you for weapons, and we'll get you right out of those handcuffs. Okay? Okay?
I don't feel nothing on my hand anyway.
She gonna take.
That's all right. We'll take them off. Here,
It's
switch.
okay, baby. She gonna
Pat her
take
down.
it, baby. He gonna stand by me.
Pat her down for weapons.
John. His name John.
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 Yeah, John. Yeah. Tell John to come on. He 10 years old.
Come towards me, okay?
We're gonna walk to this side of the van here in a second. We're gonna get her out of handcuffs. Okay? We gotta make sure no one's weapons. Because of the report that we have.
Oh, ain't nothing in there.
Okay.
I don't think you probably find there's a little sippy cup of beer that I had because I was
No,
drinking on that
we're
lady.
worried about people who got shot.
Oh, no. No. No.
All right, here,
We
walk
just
to this side of the.
We just came and we started my monitor for the clothes and stuff.
Yup, take those off. We're gonna go to this side of the van here, okay?
My mom didn't want that.
Juanette, she's the only one in there.
Yeah, mom's the only one left. Yes.
Juanette.
Yeah. She's 56.
Hey, come here, man. What's your name? John, what's up, man? It's a nice sweatshirt. This is your sister and your mom, right? All right, we're gonna hang out right here for a second, okay? Yeah, no, you're good. We just checked and make sure no one's good. You all right? Not scared, are you? You okay? So you were? You got nothing to be scared about. We're okay.
That's why I told her to check her.
Here, let's jump on this side of the van.
She had epilepsy when something like this go on.
Who does, your daughter?
Yeah, she
Oh,
gets
okay.
emotional and stuff like that.
Well, we don't want anyone to be emotional. Come here, John. Come here, buddy.
56.
Okay, if we can hit the lights. So again, I want to give context to what you just saw. We've been looking into this issue just since late yesterday, which is when we became aware of it. So we've got literally hours of body-worn camera footage to review, but that captures, I think, the gist of what it is we're here today to discuss, which was our response to the call that you heard. Officers showed compassion. They showed good judgment. The individual, the 12-year-old who was handcuffed for a minute and change. The tone of the officer, I think, was appropriate. Officers did as they were trained to do, which puts themselves and the individuals they're dealing with in the best possible position in terms of officer safety and community safety. So again, with apologies for not having more information, the way we came to learn about this was through a media inquiry, which gives me an opportunity to ask community members, when they're uncomfortable with a response from the police department, to reach out to us. The fact that this a week transpired before we heard about the mother's concern and the way we heard about it, I don't think does justice to the community or to her concerns. I would really implore any resident of the city or anyone who comes in contact with a member of the Grand Rapids Police Department, if they have questions, we pride ourselves on transparency and accountability. So giving us a call, letting us look into these issues, letting us answer your questions for you directly rather than let time transpire and then have to address it through media is really not the way we'd like to handle these issues. As a community and as a department, if we're going to continue to build trust, I think we need to open up those lines of dialogue and we need to be direct. So I know you've got questions on behalf of the community. So what questions can I answer for you about the 911 call that you heard, a couple of minutes of body-worn camera footage that you heard, and our response?
I think you're probably aware that one of the first ways we heard about this is from the Commissioner, Womack, making the posting and contacting media outlets. He said that these incidents are a result of, quoting him, officer stupidity. He's certainly had no problem being critical of how officers handle this. What do you say in response to that kind of comment?
So with respect to the commissioner, who I think has served an important role in terms of liaisoning between the department and law enforcement and the community, with respect to those comments, I think he does a disservice to both the community and the police department. Some of these issues transcend race. This didn't need to be a racialized issue. This is about police responding to a call where the complainant, again, who lives a stone's throw from the house we responded to, stated someone had been shot 3 times and put it directly at that house. So this response would be the same in any zip code in this city. It would be the same if it was my house, yours, or Commissioner Womack's, based on the limited information we had, the danger involved both to the officers and members of the community. So with respect to Commissioner Womack, I wished he would have reached out to us or encouraged the mother to reach out to us directly so we could have had some candid conversations about why we do what we do and why it's best practice and why it ensures the safety of everyone involved. This is not the ideal way to be addressing the concerns of the mother.
Some have addressed the same pattern, because there's been a few incidents involving black children who hadn't committed crimes, who these kind of complaints arise. And they seem to really be focused on Grand Rapids Police, and at least in our area. Why do you think that is?
Well, a couple things. One is this department will handle a couple thousand calls for service per week. And I think it's important to realize of the instances that have been brought to public attention, none of them were self-initiated police work. So whether you're talking about the incident involving the young men at the Kroc Center in which we received a 911 call that they had a handgun, if you're referring to the two twins who were stopped along with a 17-year-old because a motorist saw or thought she saw them having a handgun, I think it's important to note in each instance we were responding to a community member who saw what they perceived to be a threat. And that's our responsibility. And I recognize as a parent and a grandparent that the images are not always pleasant. But the outcome that we're looking for, which is a safe community and officer safety, I think are occurring. So I think the other factor is the fact that we do wear body-worn cameras. We're the only agency in West Michigan doing so, and the fact that we open ourselves up for that kind of scrutiny, and that's something that we invite. And we invite that confident in the fact that the men and women who wear this uniform do so with a spirit of service. And when they come in contact with individuals, regardless of how difficult the situation is, they act appropriately with compassion and good judgment.
You talked about incidents that come to the public through, whether it's the media or whatnot. 4 incidents in the last 2 years or so that we've reported on, we've talked to you about. Right. Have there been other incidents that haven't gotten to us that involve handcuffing children, 12 years, give or take, or are these kind of outliers?
So I think to do your question justice, so if we handle 170,000 calls for service a year, and we're looking at the better part of 2 years, we're looking at maybe 350,000 calls for service. The fact that we've identified or have had help in identifying 4 instances where responses have been questioned and responses have been given, I think goes to the point that they are the outliers. That being said, that no way, I don't mean to make a connotation that they're outliers to the extent that we did something inappropriate. I think what you just saw here was policing as it's meant to be done. The officer's response, and this may be lost on members of the general public, but the officer's response is as much to safeguard the individuals in that house as it is for officer safety. We don't want incidents. You've seen incidents in other parts of the country where, based on a lack of distance, reactionary time, someone panics, someone makes a quick move, and tragedy has occurred. By doing what we do, by securing someone, patting them down for weapons, quickly unhandcuffing them, reuniting them with their mother, having a conversation, making sure everyone's whole, and getting them back in their home, that's what we're trying to accomplish, and that's what you see here. So to answer your question, I believe it's the outlier, and I think that's the nature of what we do.
I think a lot of people can understand what you're saying and what you're trying to do. Why do you think it is that these folks who are coming to public officials and the media, why don't they seem to get that?
You'd be asking me to speculate about someone's motives, and that's tough for me to do. I'm comfortable discussing what I believe to be the motives of the men and women from the Grand Rapids Police Department who responded to this call, because I've spent time with them and I know their character and I know what they're trying to achieve, which is a safe outcome for everybody. But in terms of why people choose to go to direct to media or direct to a commissioner as opposed to taking their concerns to us, we are readily accessible. We really want to have those conversations, and the quicker the better. The fact that a week transpired before I had a chance to have a conversation with a mother, I think is a disservice to everyone involved. I much rather would have had a phone call that evening and had a chance to have that conversation sooner.
Do you all follow up with incidents like this after, they happen? Because, it seems like it does usually take a couple days. Are police responding to say, hey, we want to explain to you what happened after something like this?
We do, and you see a little bit of that at the tail end of this clip that we showed in terms of the conversation and the context provided. In addition, as soon as we became aware of it, myself and command staff reached out to the mother yesterday.
Is there a procedure or a policy, just thinking back to last March when the first one of these kind of public incidents happened with a youth being cuffed or multiple youth. Is there a policy where officers kind of notify, like, hey, you know, we handcuffed 12-year-old tonight, this may be an incident, or this might hit the media, or this might be something we're going to have to explain a little bit down the road? If it's only been maybe 4 incidents that we've seen, it would make me think that the officers would think this is going to go public, we should get out in front of it unless it happens more often than that, and then maybe there isn't a policy to kind of give a heads up.
So I think a couple of policies that have come to fruition based on some of the incidents that have occurred. The youth interaction policy, which came to be with input from the community and input from the 21st Century Policing Task Force. And I think you see in this clip, the decision was made not to handcuff the 10-year-old. The decision was made to handcuff the 12-year-old very quickly while she was patted down for weapons. That was explained to both her and the mother, and she was unhandcuffed in under 2 minutes. The bias-free policing policy, which was adopted in the last couple of years. So yes, in terms of policy, trying to ensure best outcomes and best practices for these types of calls, I think we've done a good job with that.
There's not like a procedure, though, to kind of heads up because we handcuff somebody under the age of this. Keep in mind it might get to the public at some point soon.
The men and women, the officers, the first responders, it's very easy for me to stand up here. So the incident was a week ago today. It's easy for me after the fact to recognize what maybe should have prompted a phone call so we could have had some of these conversations. I give all the credit in the world to the men and women who are responding with limited information. You heard the phone call. They're responding thinking that they're going to find an individual who's been shot. They get there, there's no one there. The house that has been identified to them, they now need to approach. So we're asking a lot from the men and women in uniform in terms of being sensitive, ensuring officer safety, ensuring safety of the community, and I give them credit. I think in this instance they did just what they were trained to do and just what I'd want to see them do.
The officer in that video that you spoke to and said that he treated that child with compassion, which I tend to agree with. Is that a direct response from the youth interaction policy? The video of Honesty Hodges being handcuffed, some would argue that the officer was a little flippant with her when they were handcuffing her. And this time around, there was a little more compassion shown to the child. Is that a direct result from the youth interaction policy, or is that just a nice cop? So
to your point, I think you need to take each incident and look at it individually in terms of what was known, what the officers were responding to. I guess to further answer that question, I think we've put a lot of emphasis on ensuring that training regarding appropriateness of response involving young people. And I think the conversations that we've had internally have made us a better department. And I don't mean to cast dispersions after the fact on either the Honesty Hodges, in which I was pretty vocal regarding the issue, but I think we continue to improve. I think the policies that we've put in place have made us a stronger department. I think the conversations we've had with the community have made us collectively stronger, but I think there's still work to be done. Again, the fact that we didn't hear from the mother after this incident and a week transpired, and then we heard about it via media, not ideal. Again, I want to implore any family member or any community member for that fact who's aware of an incident which they think is deserving of additional review or even just additional conversation to reach out to us.
So as you guys continue to work on building trust, do you think that there will be a change in how the response is, like you're wanting people to call you all, but if they don't, if they're scared or whatever reason they have, are you all going to be reaching out to these families to say, let's go through the details?
We always try, and that was the phone call that I made yesterday to the mother. Unfortunately, it wasn't well received, but I'm always optimistic that our outreach will pay dividends and we'll be able to have a conversation.
Will you continue to try with this family, or is it kind of done at this point?
Disappointingly, when I called the mother yesterday and told her who I was and why I was calling, she terminated the phone call. She chose to hang up, and certainly within her rights to do so. And then upon a return phone call, chose not to answer. I really think if our objective is to get better as a community, it's a collaborative effort. It takes conversation, hard dialogue between the police department and members of the community. So I'm hoping that upon further reflection, she'll be willing to give us an opportunity to sit down with both herself, the 10-year-old and the 12-year-old. If we're going to make gains, I think that's how it's going to be done.
There are certainly segments of the community that realize that these incidents that have gone public all involve black children. Do you think this is happening with white children and it's just not going public, or is this something that's happening more to black children?
So I think the question is a difficult one to the extent that I'm trying to quantify an unknown. So whether it's occurring across the city, here's what I can tell you, is the training's consistent, our response is consistent regardless of the neighborhood, regardless of the race, regardless of the gender. When we respond to a call of someone being shot, that's the response that you're going to get. Now, whether a similar response in a different neighborhood would result in a phone call to media or a phone call to an elected official, I can't say. What I can say is our response, again, in issues like this, transcends race. When you're talking about people with guns, or you're talking about someone who's been shot, and in this instance, the caller reported the individual had been shot 3 times, our response is going to be consistent. So I think that's the best I can do in terms of trying to anticipate whether the same occurrences are occurring in different neighborhoods without the subsequent blowback.
You mentioned the officer chose not to handcuff the 10-year-old. Can you provide some context as to maybe why that was the case, different from the 12-year-old?
I think they used good discretion. I think they recognized the 12-year-old, if you look at the footage, she's 12, getting ready to turn 13. And as we have spoken about before, not uncommon for an adult to ask a younger person to secure or hold the weapon. I think the momentary handcuffing of the 12-year-old, less than 2 minutes again, just to ensure that she wasn't holding a weapon for someone, and then just a quick pat down of the 10-year-old. You even hear the officer ask the question, "You're not afraid, are you?" And then you've got nothing to be afraid about. Be comfortable. We're going to get you back with your mom in just a second. So again, very easy for us to have good questions and good dialogue a week after the fact. When you've got young men and women with limited knowledge in terms of what they're facing on a dark street where they're potentially at risk, and want to ensure safe outcomes for both community members and themselves, this is a good outcome.
We saw the 12-year-old come out, and then you hear the 10-year-old come out as well. Can you speak to before that, the police first arrive? I'm guessing the mother comes out, and kind of how that played out.
So I don't want to speak inaccurately, so we're still in the process of reviewing body-worn camera. We had multiple officers, as you see there, so we want to review, and we'll review. We'll do a review of in-car camera. We'll do a review of body-worn camera. We're in the process of reading reports that were generated by everyone that was on scene, and as soon as we can, we'll provide a more thorough response to any follow-up questions that community members may have. But I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to share what I've shared today. I think it's very important that community recognize this is what we were dealing with, a 911 call, not a self-initiated police activity. 911 call from, again, someone living in very close proximity. The caller appeared genuinely upset. We had good reason to believe, based on that call, that something had transpired that put both community and law enforcement in harm's way. Officers reacted accordingly. I think they showed compassion. They acted consistent with training, both best practices nationally and consistent with our juvenile interaction policy. And I think the fact that we're having this conversation a week later is a little troubling. And again, I want to implore members of the community, if you're aware of an issue that you think needs to have conversation or could have been done differently, we are here to have those conversations, and those may be difficult conversations. I think anytime race is an element of a conversation, it tends to make some people uncomfortable. Recognizing that, we want to be a party to those conversations, and we're willing to be at the table. So,
one last question for you with the 911 caller. If this ends up being a false report, which it sounds like they didn't find a victim of a shooting, is there any reason to believe this was a false report or just a mistake, or, I mean,
yeah,
charges?
No reason to expect or to suspect that this was malicious. The modified phone call with the voice being changed doesn't do it justice, but I heard the original call. There's real concern in that caller's voice that someone has been shot. And the fact that we were unable to locate a victim doesn't necessarily mean that there wasn't one. We did check with local hospitals, and no victim was identified, but got no reason to believe that that call was made with anything other than the best of intentions. So, thank you.